we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever wanted to reach out to the podcast, let us know about a topic you ever wanted to hear or anything at all, actually, just hit us up on our DMs at the Bigmark Pod, at the Bigmark Podcast. We're always happy to hear whatever you guys want to say. Love you all in the comment section. If you are on YouTube, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you know when the next video comes out. And again, if you ever wanted to donate to the podcast, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. Thank you all for being here today. I really appreciate it. It's another exciting episode, as I always say, but I'm coming right off the heels of a great concert, and I thought I'd talk about these lads. I went to go see them on Friday, and it was a great show. And this band's kind of always been. They've always been a band that's kind of been like a little bit more in the background. Like I've always liked their music, but it wasn't necessarily something I listened to all the time. I mean, when their singles came out, I enjoyed them, and it was when they first started coming out. I think their first songs were kind of on the radio in 2013-ish. I was still working summer jobs and stuff, and there was always something on the radio, so I'd hear these guys all the time, and I'd be surprised if I never came across them at some juncture, at some concert or festival or something over the years. Who knows? Maybe. But the band I'm talking about is the Glorious Sons. And they formed in 2011. They're from Kingston, Ontario. Great town. A lot of great bands have come out of Kingston, Ontario. They are kind of like rock, southern rock, to be more specific, if you will. They're indie-ish, but when I saw them described as southern rock, I was like, that makes sense. Their members are Brett Emmons, he's vocals, Jay Emmons on the guitar, Adam Paquette on drums, Josh Hewson on piano, Peter Van Helvert on bass, and Steve Kirstein on like keys and stuff and the guitars and all types of other things. So those are kind of like the playing members right now. It's always cool when I see the Emmons brothers there. There's a lot of great bands really that have had brothers in the band. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It gives you a chance to it gives the brothers anyway a chance to play for a long time together. In fact, my first band in high school had a set of brothers, fraternal twins, in fact, in the band, and they actually the Bonjay brothers, shout out Justin and Matt. They had an interesting kind of musical come up in the fact that when they first started playing music, Matt was on drums and Justin was on guitar, I believe, or at least keys. And then when they switched over, Justin started playing drums, because that's when I met them in grade 9. Justin was playing drums in the music program at St. Mary's. And then Justin was in our music class too, but he was playing sax. So maybe they switched right around then or just before. But it's cool when the brothers can at least speak that language, and then they have that experience of playing together for so long. So that's super cool there. Like I said, I saw them at First Ontario Center on Friday. I guess it would have been December 1st. Tremendous. First Ontario Center, formerly known as Cops Coliseum, as I like to continually colloquially call it that, Cops Coliseum. And I wanted to give a huge shout out to Scott Mallon. In fact, it's funny, another time a Kingston band came to town, Scott was involved with some tickets, but I wanted to thank him anyway, because I got the tickets from Scott, and recently Scott and his family have experienced a major loss of one of their family members, and I just want to respect their privacy. But Scott Mallon is a great friend of the podcast, has been on before, suggested guests, and has always been a tremendous friend and a great person, and someone I'm proud to know and honored to know. And it's tough to see someone you care about go through hard times. But he reached out to me last week and said, "Hey, I got some tickets here. Are you down to go? They're floor seats to the Glorious Sons at Cops Coliseum, First Ontario Centre." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing." My buddy Julian was coming in from out of town. I was like, "Oh, hey, do you want to go see this band? I don't know if you've ever seen them or heard of them." And I've always heard that they're a great live band. Like I said, they've always kind of been in the background, but I've always heard great things about anyone who has seen them live. So it was a great opportunity, and I didn't want to say no to Scott. Obviously, yeah, I benefited from it, and it's not necessarily a band, like I said, that I'm going to reach out to hear or go out of my way to see. But again, I was super grateful, and like I mentioned before, it's funny because Scott was also involved in the last time that I was at Cops Coliseum seeing a band from the floor. I've mentioned this before on the show, but when the Tragically Hip were doing their last tour, once Gordy got diagnosed with his degenerative brain disorder, Tragically Hip went out and did a tour, their last tour. They were still a touring band up until that point, and I'm not sure how much the band knew or what kind of signs Gord was showing up until that point, but they knew just as well as every other Canadian knew that this was going to be the Tragically Hip's last tour. We didn't know how long it was going to be, like if Gord was going to die on tour, who knew? But every Hip fan and seemingly every other Canadian in the world had their eyes on this tour. And they made a bunch of stops. They went to Bob Cajun. I think they had a couple nights in Toronto proper. Then they came through Hamilton, and their last show was going to be in Kingston, like I said, where they're from. And I was working as a personal trainer at this point, and I was busting my balls to try and get these tickets. I was doing literally everything I could. I was joining contests. I was calling into radio stations. I was blocked off time of the days that there's pre-sale tickets and then the official sale tickets. And I was using people's credit cards that had like American Express, early bird, whatever the fuck, access and shit like that. I was trying my best. Denied. And this is like 2017, I think. And like, that's the time of major bots, ticket bots, people like whatever programmers using technology to purchase mad tickets all at once, and just buying other people out of an opportunity to see a show that they would love to see, just to try and resell those tickets to make a profit. So pretty scummy, but I was hoping, hey, maybe this might be some type of different thing. Who knows? But alas, it was not. So I was there, 10 a.m. pre-sale, whatever it was supposed to go down. I was there with my laptop and like the desktop at the gym I was working at, ready to go. I was like, fucking, don't talk to me right now. I'm trying to get tickets, doing everything I could. Denied everywhere along the way. I'm like, fuck, this fucking sucks. I was super bummed. But alas, I was lucky. I got to see them a few times before I saw them at Massey Hall. Saw them on Canada Day twice at Danforth and Burroughs Creek. And again, super grateful for those times I got to see them. And I was ready to live with that. And come the day of the show, I was going to kind of go down to Cops to see if either people were reselling tickets right then and there, do it super greasy, or even just fucking stand outside the concert hall and listen. Like, that's what I was willing to do. But that day, I get a text message from Scott Mallon, and he's like, "Yo, Mark, are you the Mark K who won the Tragically Hip concert tickets, like through the Tragically Hip website. And I was like, I don't think so. Like, I didn't get any emails or anything. And he's like, check your junk folder. So I go check my junk folder, and there it is from the Tragically Hip. Mark, you've won an opportunity to buy these tickets. Now, essentially, what it was is I entered a concert through the Tragically Hip's website where they, I can't say raffle off, but they allow a bunch of tickets to come on sale, and then they give people opportunities to win a chance to buy them. So they're not necessarily like just giving away the ticket right out, but you're just getting a chance to buy like extra tickets is the way I saw it. And I'm thinking, okay, these are going to be like extra tickets. They're going to be like in the nosebleeds or in some weird areas where they couldn't sell them. But anyway, I go up to the kiosk where they tell you to go, and they're like, oh yeah, here you go. It's gonna be like $315, I think was the price. For some reason, sticks in my head for the two tickets. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I was willing to probably pay $300 a ticket, and I was fucking stoked. And I was like, oh my god. I look at the ticket and I'm like, oh my god, does that say the floor? 8th row on the floor, and like they had seating on the floor, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, like I'm about to go see Tragically Hip, 8th row from the floor, and they're like, we ask you, like, please don't leave the building to like resell them and anything. And in fact, if I did, and I heard about this, I don't know, somehow at the show or before, I heard that there were floor seats going for thousands and thousands of dollars, $8,000, $10,000 per ticket. So I could have walked out of there and sold those tickets, but there was no fucking chance. There was not a thought in my mind at the time at all that I wasn't gonna fucking use those tickets. And fortunately, Scott had tickets already, but if he didn't, he would have been the first one fucking coming with me. And again, always forever grateful to Scott Mallon for saving my life, at least in getting those tickets anyway, because I would have been pretty bummed. But again, another huge win from Mr. Mallon himself. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate the tickets. Hope you're doing okay. Like I mentioned before, I've always heard that the Glorious Sons were a great live band. Once I saw them, for sure, tremendous live. Their lead singer Brett is a great front man. He was a little like, we were kind of more to like the left side of the GA area, or stage left, I should say. He was a little bit loving stage right a little bit more, but hey, what are you going to do? But the music was really good. The bass player could have been fucking moving around a little bit more. I think that would be Peter Velvort. Shit, I can't even read my own writing now. Valvort. Anyway, he was a little tethered to his mic. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of guys sing backup vocals, and it was funny. Me and my buddy Julian, another friend of the podcast, I went with him, and we were kind of saying, like, you know, there's a lot of songs here where the rest of the band is singing, like you can see them singing into their microphones, but for whatever reason, they weren't really up in the house. I couldn't hear them very, very well in the actual arena. So I don't know if that was some kind of illusion, like auditory illusion, because sometimes it's actually weird. Like, as much as floor seats are awesome, you get to be like super close to the band. It's not always the best like listening experience. Like, I noticed that from the Tragically Hip show, and I was even closer for that show. That you kind of just hear like what's coming right off the stage, and that's like a lot of like the monitor mix probably for the artists, and that's not the best vocal mix, I feel. So maybe that had something to do with it, and if you're a little higher up in the stands, you could hear some of that sound a little bit better. So that was a little bit odd, but other than that, super energetic, great light show. Band was super tight, super tight. But it's kind of funny, right? Like, as much as like I dig on their music, their studio songs, I would say I for sure enjoyed them more as a live band. And it's interesting. There's a lot of bands like that throughout the years, right? Where you might enjoy You might have heard their record and go, oh, that's pretty good. But then as soon as you get to see them live, it becomes this whole other experience, right? Like, I think a lot of the bands that are really good live have that effect on people. You know, I mentioned the Tragic Hip already. They're really interesting. Like, when I finally got the chance to see them live, I fully became a fan for the rest of my life. Pearl Jam, exact same idea. As soon as I got to see them actually live and see how much they care for their fans, how much their fans care about them, I was fully locked in. Boom, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of bands like that who knows? Recording in the studio, I can say this firsthand. Sometimes recording in the studio becomes like you're under a microscope, and it's a lot like when you have an athlete who tests really poorly. Like, they'll be in a combine or they'll be doing their standardized testing and they fucking suck, but they're one of the best players out on the court or out on the field during the actual game. There's something about the testing atmosphere, the testing aspect, and that's what happened in the studio. It really tests your skill and your ability to really lock in a performance. Yes, there's spontaneity in the studio, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it comes down to, like, how can you replicate this thing over and over again perfectly, that maybe we can find, again, the take that fits. And there's a lot of bands out there that use a studio that aren't, like, the band you're actually seeing isn't the band that played on the record, right? Like, there's some bands, like, I don't want to say like the Monkees, but that's like a really, really old, really old example. But I'm sure a lot of these newer pop bands, like, on the record itself, they're having someone else do the performances, and then they learn how to do it and they play it live. I've had to play like a bass line that a producer wrote in my last band, and it feels weird. It doesn't feel like yourself, but if you perform it, you perform it, right? So to me, it really counts. Yes, the studio is awesome, but, like, when you have people there in the room for you and you can play your heart out for them and fucking put your guts out on the table, that elevates things, and it elevates their appreciation of your band, because they see all the effort and work that you're putting into it right then and there. It was funny. I didn't really know this until that night when we were talking to some other fans of the band. And Brett Emmons, the lead singer of the Glorious Sons, used to date Jordan Miller from the Beaches. And I kind of knew she dated someone that was also in the industry too, but the Beaches and the Glorious Sons met on, they were out on tour, and Brett and Jordan met whilst on tour and fell in love and kindled a relationship, and super great. But that relationship inevitably came to an end, and they ended up both writing songs about each other, which obviously, again, when you're an artist and that's your way to express yourself, and you're also an artist that's famous, people are going to hear those songs. So the Glorious Sons wrote Dream, and the Beaches and Jordan herself wrote Blame Brett, which is pretty on the nose. And I read in an interview, Brett obviously would prefer if it wasn't his own fucking name in the song, and Dreams doesn't say, hey, Jordan, you fucked me, you fucked me up, because Blame Brett is written, and this is what Jordan said in an interview. She said that she wrote Blame Brett as basically an apology in advance to all of her new boyfriends, or anyone that she ends up dating. It's not her fault. It's her ex's fault. So don't blame her. Blame Brett, which is interesting, and it kindles Fleetwood Mac ideas and things like that of this is what happens, again, like I said, when you're in the music industry and you get into a relationship with someone else and you both have the ability to write about those happenings and put them in a song, and people are going to hear about them. And yeah, maybe all the Beaches fans hate Brett Emmons, and maybe all the Glorious Sons fans hate the Beaches, but who knows, right? Like, it's kind of funny, and hey, it sure makes festivals interesting if they're both on the bill. Let's just put it that way. But But obviously, that brings up a little bit of a larger point too, right? It's difficult when you're a sensitive person, when you're an artist, when you're someone who is trying to distill reality into a way that people can kind of intake in a pleasurable way. Kind of leaves you open for potentially more chaotic relationships, whether that's with yourself, with other people, with drugs and alcohol, with the music itself, with the road. There seems to be a lot of tumultuousness in the music industry. And again, like I said, we're sensitive people as musicians. And I think that happens in a lot of other worlds of art. But again, in music for sure, because it tends to draw certain personalities, right? Visual artists, you can kind of get away with being extremely introverted. You don't have to talk to anyone. It doesn't matter what you look like. It matters what your painting looks like. But there's something about musicians, and especially modern musicians, and throughout time, since the 70s kind of thing, because back in the day, you could kind of be the same. You could be a fucking wicked musician, but it doesn't necessarily matter how you looked. And if you really wanted to, you could just be a studio musician. No one would ever see you. That still exists today. But a lot about musicians is the performance, right? It's you going out there and you have personality, and a lot of people who have the balls and the guts and the want and the need and the capability of going on stage in front of a bunch of people and tearing your heart out and leaving it on the stage and say, what do you fucking think about that? Takes some balls. And again, it kind of attracts certain types of personalities as well. It attracts personalities that might have some narcissistic tendencies, or praise kinks, at least. No, but again, it's not always the most healthy atmosphere, because a lot of times I shouldn't say it like that. I should say what I'm meaning is that when you tread into the dark waters of the mind, sometimes it's tough to swim back, right? And again, people deal with other addictions and things like that, and they get into trouble with music. But again, a lot of times when you're really examining the soul, right? When you stare into the abyss, sometimes the abyss stares back, kind of thing. And in some weird ways, it's like we want to see crazy. We want to see people go to the extremes, and we want to hear about, and that's what we celebrate in some ways, are these people who've gone to these extremes and come back and still able to report and stuff, right? So it can be a vicious cycle. It can be a vicious beast of what the music industry expects and what the artist thinks the music industry expects too, right? Like that can be a very different thing. And even look at a lot of the Glorious Sons of their songs. They have a song called Panic Attack. They have a song called Sawed Off Shotgun, which is titled SOS. Like you can go back and try to find all different things and be like, oh, look at all these different things that are pointing to issues. But again, it's important to take care of your mental health. And even if you are a musician and you feel like if you go and take care of yourself, you're going to lose some of that aspect. You're going to lose some of that edge. You're not going to be the same person. That might be the case, depending on how severe your situation is, and depending on if you have to go on any medications or anything like that. But you'll probably be in such a better place that, yes, you might be creating things in a different way, but you'll still be creating things, right? Checking in on your friends, everyone. That's all I'm trying to say. That's the Glorious Sons, everyone. Interesting story. Let me know what you guys think about Brett and Jordan's relationship. I'd like to hear about it. Hit us up, DMs, podcast, Patreon. Hit us up in our DMs at the Bigmark Podcast on Instagram or at the Bigmark Podcast on Twitter. Check out our Patreon. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Peace.